Hi everybody, hope you're well. This video is requested by Caroline Masson and also by Maria Gordon. So in this video I'm going to be talking about two things. The first part is I'm going to be talking about how I work with my teams in order for them to succeed. And the second thing is how you can make your own team in order to find the right people for your team in order for you to succeed. So the first thing that I do whenever I'm starting a new team is I obviously want to have a goal. Having a goal is very important because if you don't have a goal within your team, then there's nothing to aim towards and nothing to work towards. So having goals that maybe change over the course of time mean you might start off and think, okay, well, we want to be the third best team. I want to be the second best team. And eventually you might say, right, we're going to be the best team now. And that will change over time, okay? The longer your team is there, I guarantee the more your goals will change. So that's one of the first things. The second thing is you really need to communicate with your team, and it's very important, I think, too, is to a certain amount of leadership, because leadership comes into it because some teams I find are very easy to lead. You just say, okay, we need to do X, Y, Z, and everybody goes and does X, Y, Z. But some other teams you will find that there's more of a mix, and some people need a bit more of a push in order to work towards targets than other people. And communicating with those people is very important because you need to be talking to your team needs to be talking to you, because if you're not communicating within a team, communication basically is a make or break point. If your team never talks to each other, less will get done. Now obviously there can be the occasion where everybody's communicating so much they're not doing any work. That can happen too, but that's usually not the problem. It's usually the other way around. It's usually a lack of communication. Knowing how to lead your team correctly is also important too, because different people need to be led in different ways. Some people don't like authority too much, and it's not about being bossy. Leadership is not about being bossy. It's about knowing how to work with the people that you're working with. Some people, as I said, need a little bit more persuasion in order to work towards goals than other people. And some people, work very easily and very independently, and they need hardly any of that at all. But you've got to know, you will learn over time who needs that and who doesn't. So those are some of the first things: having a goal or a target, communicating well, and knowing what kind of leadership you have to give to your team. The other thing is very important is rules. Rules grow over time, because I've found with my teams is you will start off with maybe 1 or 2 rules and eventually that will grow. And I've had some teams with maybe 22 different rules. And the number of rules doesn't matter. It's about knowing what rules you need for your team. So this is different across a lot of ones, but I tend to use rules in order to ensure fairness across my team. Because I don't like the idea of, there's no I in team, and there's no point in having one person doing all the work. It needs to be shared. So I find that with team rules, it's important to have those there in order to provide structure so everybody knows what the deal is, what's okay and what's not okay, and so forth. And I think that's very important. The other thing is resources. I need to know that my team has the resources to meet the expectations, the targets, and the rules that I've set. So for example, if I say, okay, you have to do 3 blops a week for this team, then I need to know that they have the resources to do that every week. Because if they don't, and I set those if I set too high a target or too, rules that are too strict, that can start to, make people demotivated, lower morale. People start to not want to do things because they're afraid to, they're going to feel like they're going to fail automatically. So it's also about knowing that. It's very important to know what your resources are within your team, because if you try to set things that are too high and the resources are much lower than that, then there's going to be a conflict. The other thing is recruitment. Recruitment is something I have to do all the time. Not all the time, but it's something I have to be aware of all the time, because you sometimes come across new players who are at the level where you feel like if I taught them a little bit, they could actually be really fantastic players. So I think it's important, even if you're not maybe recruiting right now, is to always have your eyes looking for new people, because people stop playing, people get sick, people have to take holidays, people have school, people have exams, and they can be gone for weeks, they can be gone for months, or they can go forever, and you just don't know. So it's always important to know what kind of, I suppose, skill base of players are out there. So if you do have a situation where you're like, okay, well, we need 2 new people to keep up, with the target that we've set, that you can go and find those people. So I think recruitment, you need to be aware of it. You need to have a strategy. So if anybody does come to you and say, I'd like to apply, that you can give them questions or say to them, right, okay, I would like to talk about this, or, find out more. Just have that ready for them. So the other thing, the second part really, is whenever you're making your own team. So obviously one of the things that really comes into it is if you're deciding to start a team, and I'm not just talking about VIP teams, by the way, I'm talking about any kind of team at all, or breeding group. One of the very important things is that you get other teammates. So you might just be starting, you're on your own, or maybe you've just one friend helping you. So there's a couple of things that you want to be looking at, certain qualities with your teammates. Now this will vary a little bit. Don't take this as the actual, the set rules. This is just my own experience. So when you're looking for quality teammates, you want to make sure that you find people who are going to be committed and loyal and want to really work with your team. Now, this doesn't mean that if you think somebody, isn't going to be there 24/7, that they shouldn't be in your team, because that's just insane, right? It's about meaning really that you have a team that is committed and that they're passionate about what you want to do. So that's the kind of loyalty that I'm talking about, that they have a love for working with this particular horse or whatever, like you do. That they're going to be motivated to work for those goals. So obviously whenever you're looking for people that fit that criteria, you want to be looking for people with similar interests on the game, because that is going to help a bit. The other thing is resources. Obviously you need to find people, and as I did mention this earlier, that have enough resources, because as I said, if you're asking them to blob 10 blobs a week, you need to make sure that they can have the resources to do that, whether that's through passes or agent point hunters and so forth. Because if you take on somebody who from the get-go doesn't have the resources to do those 10 blobs a week, you've already kind of shot yourself in the foot, and probably them too, because they're going to suddenly realise that they can't do it. They're going to start to panic, and that's not a good thing at all. So I think it's very important to know that they have the resources, and to ensure that they have the resources before they join, because there really isn't any point in taking on somebody who's not going to be able to do it. Now, there is sometimes a point of taking on someone who's very, very close to having the resources and they just need that extra time, or maybe you want to hold off and wait a couple of weeks until they have. But as long as they can show that they're proactive about getting those resources and they're not messing you around, then I think that's a good thing, because if they're proactive, you can see that they're going to try and they are going to put the work in. The other thing is obviously finding some people maybe with experience, or at least just expertise. So whenever I say this, it's not necessarily about finding people that know everything, but it's about having people that can, obviously if you set a goal, you need them, if you want to be the top breed, for example, you need to know that they can blop. You might need to know how fast they can blop. You might need to know how many resources they're going to have. So whenever I say experience and expertise, it's, also the fact that if they have fillers, if they know how to fill for themselves, they know how to get competition wins easily. It's like things like that. To know that they have some kind of experience or ability to work with that, or maybe they're very experienced at blipping that particular breed, for example. Those are very good things as well. So if you've already found somebody that knows how to work with Mustangs, for example, really, really well, that could really work well if you also have a Mustang team. So that's something you might want to look at. The other thing is quality control, and what I mean about this, it's kind of like having people that will work to a certain standard. So if you take on people who really don't care and will just do the very, very least, really you can already tell that they really have no motivation or care or anything like that, you're going to find it very difficult to, I think, put up with that, because after a certain amount of time it will probably grate on your nerves. If you have people who just really don't seem to care, will do the very least that they can possibly do, or less if they can get away with it. And I think that can be quite great. And if other people are working to a higher quality and they're saying, well, we have a quality of standard which says we have to reach 100 blup or we have to have over 80 blup, and they're trying to get away with 60 blup. So it's just something like that you might want to take into consideration, that they understand the quality of standard that you're working to. The other thing is, it's good actually to find people who are good problem solvers, and it's not necessarily just about like big problems but little problems too, so that they can show evidence that they're kind of like good at figuring out things. If something's not right, if maybe you can't find empty competitions, that they have maybe another solution. Just finding people that are good like that, or maybe you yourself are good like that, so you'll understand when you find somebody who is like that and thinks like that. So some people will be good at figuring out small problems, and some people are better at figuring out big problems, and some people are quite good at doing both. And it's good to have a mix of that, because different perspectives, we might be able to help you solve different problems. And the other thing is having people who are flexible. I suppose it depends too. And I don't necessarily just mean like, they can blup at different times of the day or anything like that. It's just knowing that you have a team that, works well, and they can, sort of change to certain things that happen, because obviously sometimes things will happen maybe with your team, so you need to have a team that can kind of change direction if they need to. So say you had set a goal and you've realised that you need to achieve it maybe 2 days earlier, that your team could maybe, try and do that they're not going to go and panic. So I think it's good to find people who are good at adjusting to different situations. Another thing is commitment. So I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier when I was talking about loyalty. So having a team, finding people that are definitely committed to that goal and are good at kind of deciding that they're committed to obviously achieving it. So I think that's quite an important thing. I think the other thing too is finding people who are very good at building relationships with other players, because building and relationships with other players is good in a couple of different ways. You can learn things from other people, obviously, and I know it sounds really obvious, but speaking to other people, talking to other people, and obviously communicating is really good, because you have potential there to learn new things, potential to help you solve problems, maybe to help you with fillers, things like that. So having a team mate that is good at that is a very good thing to have, because if they're out there building relationships, they might come across somebody who would suit your team, for example. So if you recruit somebody who's very good at that, kind of like an ambassador in a way, I suppose, there's a potential chance that they could help you find other people. Another thing is cooperation. So this is like making sure your team's good at cooperating together. So you want to find people who are good at working with other people. If you find somebody who hates talking to everybody, doesn't want to like do anything, doesn't want to interact in any kind of way, it's going to be very hard for them to work with the team. Not to say that you couldn't find a bunch of people who are all like that and maybe they'll work really well together, I don't know. But generally you want to find people that are good at cooperating with others. And obviously you want to have people, I suppose, with a good self-drive too, because you don't want to always have to be harping on at people, being like, you haven't done your blups, you need to do your blups, we need to reach this goal. If you can find people who are doing it already, who are already showing that they're trying to maybe they're trying to breed the best unicorns or something, for example, in something on their own, they have a little project that they're working on, you can clearly see maybe that they have some self-drive. So it's about finding people, I think, too, that are good and they're driven and they can push themselves to achieve goals. It's not just that you're going to have to be standing behind them and like, go, hurry up, because it wears you down, and I'm sure it wears them down too. And I think it's also important to find people who are good at knowing what the team needs as well, and you need to be aware of that too, because sometimes I think it's easy to overlook things, and having a team mate who is maybe good at identifying things that you need. Maybe you do need another player, maybe you need another 3 players, or maybe you need more resources or something like that. If you have somebody you can find who's like that, I think it's good too, because they can sort of help manage resources. Some extra things I think which are important when you're looking for a teammate is having somebody, I suppose, that understands fillers, or you can teach to use fillers. They don't have to have Pegasus or VIP. I think that's kind of a bonus thing for some people. It's not the be all and end all. I think if you can find somebody that shows a certain amount of all these qualities, you're going to end up with quite a good teammate. And I think at the end of the day, really, you need to go out and talk to people, make friends and stuff, because that's going to help. You need to build relationships with people, I think, to a degree. I think it's kind of difficult sometimes. Now, I've taken on a lot of people, I suppose, that I don't know before, that I haven't already built up a friendship with, but I build it up over time with them as I'm working with them in the team. But it can be a bit scary, I think, sometimes to work with somebody you don't know. So I think probably sometimes it's easier to work with somebody that you do know, you've got to know a little bit in some way. So that's kind of some of my general thoughts on this, on how if you're, what I've done with some of my teams, and also, if you're looking to make your own team. So as I said, you don't have to have a VIP team. You just work on whatever project you want. I've seen plenty of people work very successfully without it. So thank you to Caroline Masson and Maria Gordon for requesting the video, and hope you had a lovely day. Bye guys.